Hey guys, it's Marty and welcome to Two Line Slot Cars. I think it's about time we do a proper test and tune of the Datsun. You know, I know my first review was not really a review, but I thought it was fun. But let's dig in and see just how fast can we make this Datsun, and does it outclass my Alpha and get the start this Thursday? I don't know. Let's see. All right, here we go. Let's go. Let's tune this Datsun. Man, I'm telling you what, guys, this is a great car, but I want you to see something out of the box. Never put this on the track. Just pulled it out of the box. This is why you have to look. The gear mesh is non-existent. They're not even touching the gears. Now, a lot of people will be upset at Revoslot for this. I am just telling you, this is why you have to look at your slot cars right out of the box before you throw them on. I mean, this wouldn't move. The gear is not even touching. And I'm okay with that because I'm going to tune it. I'm going to set the gear mesh. And I'm guessing that just there was the need to get these cars out because the demand was so great. There's just things that get missed. And there will be a lot of people who will be upset at Revoslot for this. I am not one of them. It happens. And I would take this car apart anyway. Let's dig in and take it apart. You really don't have to take these screws all the way out. You should be able to flex the body, but since I'm taking it apart, very nice. Man, that's a good looking car. It's a good looking car. Take a look at the chassis. Typical Revoslot. Man, these are fantastic. But look at that. It's not even touching. There is a little drop of lube on that gear, and that gear is in good shape compared to my Alpha. My Alpha has a little wobble to it. It is not flat at all. So we'll need to fix the gear mesh. That's pretty easy. Loosen these three. Just make sure you have the right tool to do that. And I believe, yeah, those were even loose. So it is a T6 Torex. First thing I should probably do is just go ahead and put the silicone tires on, because that's what we race at Cincy Slots. Go ahead. These are super tires. These are 1503s for those who are wondering. Before I do that, I swap out the guide for the wood guide that comes with it. Now, these wood guides, they are a little deep for a Carrera track, so I'll probably just hit them with some sandpaper. Okay, got a little bit of sandpaper. Take the guide. Don't want to go too far. I will take that node. Let's swap out that guide. There's a spring. Be careful. Don't lose the spring. Transfer the spring over. And what I like to do, the rules don't allow us to change guides. We can only use the guides that come with the car, either the stock or the wood guide. I like the wood guide with Carrera Track. It does a really good job. I love slot invasion guides on these. They really perform well, but they don't fit within the rules of the track. They tried to keep this Group 2 very stock, and what it's done is it's created a class of cars that are super competitive. But what I will do is, since I've got to put a new guide on it, I will put new braid. Okay, I like to take the play out of that guide. And what I will do, though, is since I've got my oil, I will put just a little drop before I tighten that up there, so that guide will move free. Oh, yeah. Too tight. That's too tight. Just a touch. Make sure that that guide can move. I really like the slotted braid. Mostly, it's easy to work with. It's easy to get. Bruce always carries it at Cincy Slots at the store. And what I do is I measure out 2 millimeters. It's the beauty of the slot car setup block. It's got the measurements on it. And then what I like to do is leave myself just a hair out of the top and that down so that it stays. And then I'll do the same thing over here with this one. Again, a little bit showing at the top of the guide. And then bend doesn't push the braid back through, right? Braid is in. Once I get that ready for the track, I'll fluff those up. How does the front end look? On my Revoslots, I like for my fronts to be pretty planted. Sure the guide is all the way the slot. I probably got a little room to true those fronts. The truer that we have, it's not easy to do these independents. So what I tend to do is swap them and put them on the rear, and then use just the car as the truer, just to take enough off to make sure that the tires are round, just barely. It'd be great to know how good these towers are in line. And I have a new alignment tool that is a 6mm bar, and it should be able to put that in and make sure that that rear axle is straight and the towers are lined up. So the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a rear end apart and I'm going to clean the bearings. So now let's pop out these bearings. Okay. So now what we're going to do with the bearings, I'm going to put them in some lighter fluid. Made a mess. So now we're going to clean these bearings. Let's check our alignment while those are getting cleaned. Okay. Wow. Not aligned. That's interesting. Wow. Okay. Not really aligned. So what we're going to do is we're going to loosen the towers slightly. Haha. Fantastic. And so now, make sure that those towers are aligned. You can buy that tool at 132 Slot Car. They're tightened up. So it came out of alignment when I tightened up the screw. There we go. Okay. So that should move nice and free. So now I know that those axle towers are aligned. So I'm letting those bearings soak. I might as well take the fronts off too and clean those bearings. It's a good habit to, and we have not put this on the track. We've not done anything. This is kind of my baseline tuning for any car. Don't lose the spacers. Brass spacer on each side. Keep track of those. We've got these off. Probably going to work on putting the rear end back together. Clean. Now we have the rear aligned. So we'll snap these bearings in. And we'll put a drop, some oil in that bearing. And now, let's see how our alignment tool, if it helped allow this to spin a little freer. Oh my. Okay, one of the things I like to do is see where the set screw is. I'll turn that about 33 degrees and then tighten. And then another 33 degrees and put this wheel on. Just to try to balance it out. Now, there was nothing super precise about that. I think you could get real picky if you wanted. But let's put the silicones back on and let's see. Oh my. That would not do that. Would not do that before. How easy that rear spins. I like it. So now I use a little bit of graphite silicone fight in it, so it's black. Messy. Doesn't take a whole lot, but man, it really does help run the gears in. Probably use something a little more aggressive, like some polish. And I still might, when I run this in, just a touch. It's not too tight, a little too much. Feels pretty good. Just be careful. Those are super easy to strip. I like it. Sounds good. Feels good. The other thing I like to do is I like to run some float. I think that trying to decide whether I want to take the chassis apart. The other thing that's good to check is to make sure that your chassis is flat. Never really had a problem with the Revos, but it'd be nice to get a little more chassis movement. Now I've got a couple of the 3mm that my brother gave me. And I don't know. I think it would be good to get that kind of movement, but I might be able to get it with just loosening these. And I also like to usually put some grease in here. A lot of people put tape. I know that some people put shims, but we found that they're fastest when they just move pretty free. So I'm going to try a little bit of oil, easy, and I don't have to take them apart. You can already hear how quiet it is. It really does a nice job. Again, I think I'm going to loosen those. We created a lot more movement in the chassis before those. They're all pretty equal. Instead of make a mess with the thread lock, we will let that dry. Once that thread lock's dry, okay, bearings cleaned. Make sure that they're aligned. Run that oil in there. Ready to go back in. A little bit of oil. And now we're ready to put the towers back on. It's kind of a challenge, but the alignment is not quite as big of a deal because these are independent. But we do want them to be lined up the best we can, right? Okay. Spacer. And then our wheel. Nope. The brass spacer. And now I'm going to loosen these towers back up and make sure that I got them lined up. It does not look round. Remember, I still have not put this car on the track. So mesh is set. Everything's lubed, ready to roll. Now let's front end, guide all the way. Really happy with that. That looks pretty good. Again, would like to true the tires, but we will do that next. Talk a little bit about what I think I'm going to run into. So typically around the front screws fairly tight, but introducing all this body float, you run into a problem. So the fronts just start to snug up. I'd like just a touch more. We've noticed that by removing the rears, you really gain some body float that really the car reacts pretty well. I do remember one thing I forgot to do is I like to put a little bit of grease right on top of those boots. I use the cleaner super lube, something really small, a little bit, goes a long way, right on top of that boot to allow that body to float freely. And I'll do the same thing up here on these. So now let's put this back together and see if we're going to run into any rubbing. Now, one of the things that we've heard as people introduce body float is you also pick up a lot of tire rub. Okay, you can see all that float we've introduced. And then what I like to do is fluff these braids up. So I'll get them to curl up just a touch. For Carrera track, seems to like that. And widen them out just a touch. I think I've got some body rub. Definitely, I know I do. And I'm not quite sure what I'm going to have to do about that. I may have to shim the body, which I hate to do because I really like position, but it's not going to go. Too much body float has caused some rubbing, so we're going to have to address that. And it's so bad, probably going to have to address it before we even try on the track. What we can do is throw the chassis on the track, run a few laps, make sure we're running smooth. Hit the guide a little bit more with some sand, with the sandpaper. Still getting some clacking, a bit on the nose. Running about 5/8, 5/9 is the chassis. That's not fast enough. Again, the motor hasn't been run in. Gears haven't been run in. Not sure about that. I really don't want to shave the body, so I may have to put a shim, and I don't know. Could go with 1,000. Come up front here and see that gives us what we need up front, and we'll start from there. That may have taken care of the front end. Well, let's give it a shot on the track. So guys, there's your baseline tuning. I'm having some issues with the tires, rubbing the body. I got the fronts fixed. I did a little bit of sanding on the body inside with my Dremel and sanding, and made some more room. But I think the super tires are just a hair wider. I am just talking just a touch than the stock tires, and I think that's causing some of my problems. And what I'm probably going to do is do some sanding on the spacers and bring those tires in just a hair on both sides. And I think once I do that, we got a pretty good runner. I ran a 5.79 with this. That's actually faster than my Alpha. And that still had a little bit of tire rub. So I think a little more elbow grease. We'll get this thing tuned up and running really, really good. That was the baseline. That is kind of what I do with every car that I get. Kind of go through that whole process. This is a great car, man, but I mean, it just looks fantastic. I mean, you have to admit, that is a great looking car. And I know there have been some people saying, well, what's the big fuss about the Datsun 510? It's a Datsun 510. It's something different. These Group 2 cars from Revoslot are fantastic as a class on their own. And I think that you need to be careful comparing cars, slotted, NSR, Carrera. Things should run against things that it should run against, right? So Group 2s should race against Group 2s, and they're all going to perform similar. Now, would I expect this to keep up with one of my NSR GT cars? No, not a chance. But I'm telling you, these cars are so much fun to drive that the speed's not, like, I don't miss the speed of the car, if that makes sense. It really is a joy to drive. The Group 2s are a lot of fun. The stance is great. They really are. They're just great cars. So if you ended up getting a Datsun, don't sit it on the shelf. They're going to make more of these things. Get it tuned up, drive it, have some fun with it. You will not regret it. Now, will I race this Thursday? I don't know. My Alpha just sticks in the slot. It just is not as fast. So we're going to break this in, break the motor in, get the tires prepped, ready to go. I did true the fronts, so I'm happy with the ride height. It's staying in the slot pretty well. Let's see how it goes. So, guys, if you like this kind of content, hit the subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, hit the bell so you get notified anytime I put out a new video. I really appreciate you tuning in. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you have a Datsun or any of the other Revoslot Group 2s. You just can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. They look fantastic. They're phenomenal. They might not be the fastest car in my collection. I know that they're not the fastest car in my collection, but I'm hard-pressed to find one that's more fun to drive. So get out there and go have fun racing.